there! My name is Hyder and welcome back to the Pantheon. We're back. I'm making videos again. Dear God, somebody stop me. Well, actually, please don't. I've just started again. So, unless you don't want this content, then do stop me. Anyway, you can press the stop button if you want to do that. But we're going to be looking at a new legendary creature. Wait, no. It's a legendary planeswalker. It's Tasha, the Witch Queen. 5 mana for a 4 loyalty planeswalker. Tasha. I knew a Tasha once. She was a lovely lady. Red hair. And whenever you cast a spell you don't own, create a 3/3 black demon creature token. So this is a form of protection, which is quite cool and integral to having a planeswalker commander. +1, draw a card for each opponent, exile up to 1. Target instant sorcery card from that player's graveyard and put a page counter on it. I think there's only about 4 cards that use page counters, and none of them use them in exile, so sadly no synergies there, maybe in the future though. And -3, you may cast a spell from among cards in exile with page counters on them without paying its mana cost. So the really cool thing about that is if our planeswalker dies, which is, want to do, we can cast it again and its page counter cards from previous can be used to cast straight away. So it's actually quite cool with storing them for later potentially, like a squirrel with acorns in the winter. And of course this can be our commander, which is integral to playing it as our commander. You can play Oathbreaker, but that's a garbage format. But please subscribe. This channel isn't garbage, at least that's what I tell myself every night. So come and join me. I'm going to make lots of videos just like this one. And without further ado, let's move on to my top 5. And in at number 5, well, what have we got? We've got Vantress Gargoyle. So I talked a bit earlier about how protecting our Planeswalker command is integral. And this is a great way of doing it, while also milling. Milling is also key to this game plan because we need things in our opponent's graveyard to exile and be able to cast. So 2 mana for a 5/4 flyer. Ooh, Gargoyle. It can't attack unless defending player has 7 or more cards in their graveyard. So we're going to be on the mill plan, but attacking isn't the main thing we want to do here. It can't block unless you have 4 or more cards in hand. We're playing blue and black, which, the 2 best colours for drawing cards. So we should be able to get some cards in our hand, shouldn't we? And then to add to the mill plan, tap, each player puts the top card of their library into their graveyard. So that's us as well, but not the end of the world. We can maybe cast some things out of our graveyards, can't we? And we're filling all of our opponents' graveyards, giving those lots and lots of choices. Then Mesmeric Orb. Everyone hates seeing this card because it's so millerific. 2 mana for an artifact. Whenever a permanent, including lands by the way, becomes untapped, that permanent's controller mills a card. So if your opponent has 10 lands, they untap them during their untap step, well, that's 10 mills right there. This is a phenomenal card and works perfectly in this game plan. Then we've got Altar of the Brood. It could be a combo card, but in here it's just general value. 1 mana for an artifact. Whenever another permanent enters the battlefield under your control, each opponent puts the top card of his or her library into his or her graveyard. The cool thing is, whenever we're going to be casting one of our opponent's spells, we're going to be getting a 3/3 demon from our commander, which will trigger this to mill, and then there's more and more choice for us to use from their graveyard. Really excellent card. Then, is it me or is cycling the best mechanic ever printed? Because it's on a great card like this. Triple blue for a sorcerer. Each opponent mills 14 cards. That's a lot of options. If you have 3 opponents, that's 20. It's at least 5 million cards that we're going to be milling with this. It's really good. However, if you want to draw a card, which we all know you do, you can cycle this, which means you discard it and draw a card. Whenever you cycle it, each opponent mills 4 cards. That's 12 cards. There you go, that we're going to be milling if we've got 3 opponents. And we're going to draw a card. So absolutely wonderful. There's a skeleton behind me. Then let's have a look at Dreamborn Muse. 4 mana, 2/2 spirit. At the beginning of each player's upkeep, that player puts the top X cards of their library into their graveyard, where X is the number of cards in their hand. Now, people tend to have a lot of cards in their hand. That's at least what I've found in life. So this is going to really mill our opponents. If they don't have any cards in hand, well, they're not really a threat, are they? So this is a great mass miller, and it's every single one of our upkeeps. Really nice. Then similarly, we've got Memory Erosion, a consistent form of mill. 3 mana enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, that player puts the top 2 cards of their library into their graveyard. Now, I don't know if you've ever played against someone, but they generally cast spells, so this should net us quite a bit of mill. A wonderful card to see. And for 3 mana, it can come out before our commander and get that mill engine going, so we can have some things to exile. Then we've got Maddening Cacophony to finish off. 2 mana for a sorcery. Each opponent mills 8 cards. But there's a kicker to it. 4 mana, so they cast it for 6 mana. If the spell was kicked, instead, each opponent mills half their library. That's quite a lot. I mean, maybe not as much as the cycling card can mill, obviously. But this is still fantastic and will really dig deep. And, you know, just casting this for 2 mana is really, really powerful as well. So a nice collection of mill there. Hopefully you enjoy it. And let's have a look at what number 4 brings us. What is it, number 4? Well, it's ways of protecting our commander and sort of Planeswalker theme abilities. Because having a Planeswalker as a commander is a unique sort of thing. And the thing like Oath of Oblivion is fantastic. 3 mana, legendary enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, each opponent sacrifices a creature. So that's pretty good, you know, worth 3 mana, I'd say. And, you know, if you're against a Voltron deck that only has their commander on the field, you've just crippled their game plan. At the beginning of each end step, if a Planeswalker enters the battlefield under your controller's turn, put a 2/2 black zombie creature token onto the battlefield. Now, one of the weaknesses of this commander is it doesn't really protect itself the turn it comes in, unless somehow you've already got something in exile that you can cast. But with this, if we played this the turn before our commander, and our commander comes in, who is a Planeswalker, well, we're going to get a nice 2/2 that can chump block and keep our commander alive. And if you're playing more Planeswalkers, well, really good. Then we got the Chain Veil, 4 mana for a legendary artifact. Sadly, very expensive these days. At the beginning of your end step, if you didn't activate the loyalty ability of a Planeswalker this turn, you lose 2. Right, we're aiming to do that, so for life loss, we shouldn't really have to deal with that. Pay 4 and tap. For each Planeswalker you control, you may activate one of its loyalty abilities once this turn, as though none of its loyalty abilities were activated this turn. So that means we can plus our commander on a turn and straight away minus our commander, which is exactly what we want to be doing. Then Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge, is a Planeswalker that, you know, works well with other Planeswalkers. And because we're playing blue and black, the majority of our ramp is going to be artifact based. Tezzeret is 6 mana for a 5 loyalty Planeswalkers. Creature and Planeswalker spells you cast have affinity for artifacts, which means they cost 1 generic less for each artifact on the board. So all of our mana rocks and other incidental artifacts are going to reduce our commander's cost in every other Planeswalker. +2, Tezzeret, Master of the Bridge deals X damage to each opponent, where X is the number of artifacts you control. You gain X life. Ooh. -3, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. So that could rebuy as, you know, one of our key artifacts. -8, exile the top 10 cards of your library. Put all artifact cards from them onto the battlefield. Bing bang bosh. Are we really bothered about that? No, we just like the nice big reduction. And then, why don't we reduce something like Teferi Temporal Archmage? 6 mana, 5 loyalty. +2, look at top 2. Put 1 on the bottom, 1 into your hand. -1, which is the main reason you're going to be playing this. Untap up to 4 target permanents. So that could be the Chain Veil, which we've got over there, and then 3 other mana things. So you could infinitely Chain Veil if you can make 4 mana off those other 3 artifacts or lands. Absolutely phenomenal. But to go back, we've also got the -10. You get Emblem with. You may activate loyalty abilities of Planeswalker control on any player's turn, anytime you can cast an instant. Ooh, that's quite good, isn't it? So if we can get that off, our Planeswalker commander will be just churning out value. It'd be absolutely phenomenal. But there you go, nice little Planeswalker package. I said I was going to stop saying that, but here we go. Anyway, in at number 3, well, what have we got? We've got Knowledge Exploitation, and a very specific way to get an exact card into our opponent's graveyard. Because that's what we want to do. This is like a silver bullet. 7 mana for a tribal sorcery rogue. You can prowl it for 4, so if you've dealt damage with a rogue to an opponent, you get to cast it for that. Not playing too many rogues, I don't think, but search target opponent's library for an instant or sorcery card. you may play that card without paying its mana cost. Then that player shuffles his library. So it does exactly what our commander wants to do. It's casting instant sorceries for our opponent. But the key thing is we get to cast it. Then we put it into our opponent's graveyard. We can then use our commander to exile it with a page counter and use it again, which is awesome. You know, reusing the best card in our opponent's library. Similarly, there's Creator's Grasp, 3 mana for a sorcery. Search target opponent's library for a card. Doesn't have to just be an instant sorcery, but this deck sort of wants to be centered on instant sorceries. When that player shuffles his library, you may look at that card and play that card for as long as it remains exiled. Ooh, remember it's face down so your opponents won't know what you've got. You know, you could take one of their key sort of pieces of their combo, so, you know, really destroy the deck, or just a nice bit of value. So a fantastic card. Sadly, very expensive. Just proxy it though, who cares? Brand new card here, Extract Brain, blue and a black and X for sorcery. Target opponent choose X cards from their hand. Look at those cards. You may cast a spell for them without paying its mana cost. Ooh, that's pretty goddamn. You could risk it and just have X as 1 and just say, you know, please give me something good, please God. But more than likely you want to pump a lot of mana into X so you get to see everything. Or this could be a nice political tool. Say, you know, John over there. John's a piece of work. He's got a big, massive board state. You could say to your opponent, hey, you got a board wipe in there? Like, yeah, I can't cast it. Oh, you're like, haha, I can cast it. X is 1. Hey, give me a minute. And you cast it for free. Absolutely wonderful. Then we've got Opposition Agent. Not only miserable card for your opponents, but wonderful for us. 3 mana for a 3/2 with Flash. And it's a rogue. Oh, the prowl cost. Hey, we've done it. You control your opponents while they're searching their libraries. Oh, I love that text. While an opponent is searching their library, they exile each card they find. You may play those cards for as long as they remain exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to cast. So you can control them, get exactly the card that you want, and then be able to cast it. Utterly fantastic. Really excellent card. So that's a nice little targeted sort of package. Christ. Too many packages going around. But really, really nice to see. Which brings me on to number 2, and this is more about the sort of general sort of game plan. We just want to be casting, well, anything our opponents have. And Mind's Dilation is wonderful for that. 7 mana for an enchantment. Whenever an opponent casts his or her first spell each turn, that player exiles the top card of their library. If it's an online card, you may cast it. Oh, that is so good. Such a powerful effect. Will really spiral because, as I said earlier, our opponents, they cast spells. I don't know why. What fools. They should just sit there and our planeswalker will, well, not attack them, but maybe something will attack them. I don't know. But this is absolutely phenomenal, and we're casting them without paying their mana cost. So we're just getting so much value. If our commander's on the field, we're just going to have loads of 3/3 demons flying around. Wonderful card. Really fantastic. Then Gonta, Lord of Luxury, a wonderful card as well. 4 mana for a 2/3 with Death Touch. It's a rogue as well. Oh my god, the prowl cost, we can play it. And then it ends the battlefield. Look at the top 4 cards of target opponent's library, exile 1 of them face down, and put the rest on the bottom of the library in a random order. You may look at and cast that card for as long as it remains exiled, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any colour to type to cast the spell. Fell apart, but it's a very long piece of text. Really great card, and just being able, just stealing your opponent's cards is wonderful. Then we've got Hedonist Trove. Now this is a sort of a nombo because it exiles our opponent's library, graveyard. It exiled the library, dear God, amazing. 7 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, exile all cards from target opponent's graveyard. You may play land cards exiled with Hedonist Trove. You may cast non-land cards exiled with Hedonist Trove. You can't cast more than 1 spell this way each turn. So if we mill them for loads, well, this is essentially drawing us 20, 30 cards. And we can play the land so we can consistently, oh god, the skeleton's back. Oh, freaky. But this is absolutely phenomenal and just great value. Then we've got Chancellor of the Spires, 7 mana for a 5/7, and it's a bit of a mill card. You reveal it from your opening hand. If you do, at the beginning of the first upkeep, each opponent puts the top 7 cards of his or her library into his or her graveyard. That's a wonderful free effect. But there's more. Flying, and when it enters the battlefield, you may cast target instant sorcery spell from your opponent's graveyard without paying its mana cost. And the really cool thing is, because you're casting it, it stays there. It doesn't go to exile. So if you've got if your opponents have something that like makes a copy of a creature, okay, this comes in, I'll cast that, make a copy of Chancellor of Spires, that comes in, use the same spell, and you can just make infinite Chancellor of Spires, loads of 5/7s. Probably get board wiped, but it's a wonderful way to end the game. And just having it in there is brilliant. It works on so many axes of the deck. Then we've got Arvinox, the Mind Flail. Weird name. 7 mana, 9/9. It's a legendary enchantment creature horror. And when it isn't a creature, unless you control 3 or more permanents you don't own. So it's probably going to be a creature because we're going to have tons of our own things. But if not, it just sits there. At the beginning of your end step, exile the bottom card of each opponent's library face down. For as long as those cards remain exiled, you may look at them and you may cast permanent spells from among them. And you may spend mana as though a mana of any colour to cast those spells. Awesome. Absolutely everything we want to do in the deck. Just casting tons of our own little things. Really, really good. Then we've got Diluvian Primordial. 7 mana for a 5/5 with flying. It's an avatar. When it enters the battlefield for each opponent, you may cast up to 1 target instant or sorcery card from that player's graveyard without paying its mana cost. If a spell cast this way would be put into a graveyard this turn, exile it instead. So this does exile the spells, but we're going to be casting tons of other spells, which with our commander will make tons of 3/3s. So much value, and if we can flicker this or something like that, bounce it back to our hand, wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Then, finally, we've got Mnemonic Betrayal. 3 mana for a sorcery. Exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. Oh, that's quite a lot of cards. You may cast those cards this turn. You may spend mana as though it were mana of any type to cast those spells. Beginning the next end step, if any of those cards remain exiled, return them to their owner's graveyard. Exile this spell. But that will generate so much mana. So, well, not mana, but value. Could generate a lot of mana. I don't know. Do whatever you want. But this can cast so many cards for just 3 mana. Phenomenal card. And the artwork, look at it. So metal. Those are a wonderful selection of stealing spells. Which brings me on to my number 1. And I've talked a bit about the fact that we're going to be exiling things. Well, let's bring them back. Ulamog's Nullifier is a 4 mana 2/3 Eldrazi processor with Devoid, so it's got no colour, even though I said it was blue and black. Weird. Flash and Flying. When it enters the battlefield, you may put 2 cards from your opponent's own from exile into their owner's graveyard. If you do, counter target spell. So that means if we've left anything in exile that we really want to cast again, we can bring it back to our graveyard, exile it with our commander, and then cast it all over again. So much value to be had. It's wonderful, and I love this card. It's just brilliant. It just feels so good to cast, and it's so bizarre. It's so weird, and it just works really well with his commander. We can even use the cards with page counts on them. Say our commander's died a few times, or we can just bring them back from exile into a graveyard and maybe use something else to cast them from a graveyard. Brilliant. It just works perfectly. I love this card. To go along with it, there's Blight Herder, 5 mana 4/5 Eldrazi processor. You cast Blight Herder, you may put 2 cards your opponent's owner from exile into their owner's graveyards. If you do, put 3 1/1 colorless Eldrazi sign tokens with sacrifice, make a mana. So this is a nice bit of ramp, nice bit of chump blockers for our commander. Ooh, that's nice, isn't it? And it just works wonderfully with the overall theme of the deck. Then we've got Ulamog's Reclaimer, 5 mana for a 2/5 processor. It's got no colour. I said it was blue, dear God. And when it enters the battlefield, you may put a card from your opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. If you do, return target instant sorcery card from our graveyard to our hand. So we rebuy one of our important instant sorceries. Maybe, you know, we can get some more prowl action going on. And it puts something back into our opponent's graveyard. And finally, to finish off, there's Oracle of Dust, a repeatable way of doing this. 5 mana 3/5 Devoid. To pay 2, puts a card an opponent owns from exile into that player's graveyard. Draw a card, discard a card. So a nice filtering tool. Yes, it's 5 mana, but, you know, At least it blocks for our Planeswalker commander. And it just worked really well with the theme of the deck. And that is my sort of selection here. I love Eldrazi's. They're my favourite creature type. And I think they really fit in this deck. And why don't you fit into my subscriptions? Hey, you can join me. I'm devoid of life and soul. But we're going to be making things like this for loads of different commanders. So come and join me. And with that, I'm going to say goodbye. So, bye.